Good afternoon. My name is Conor McManus, and you are listening to the Collective Fitness Show. I am here with my good friend Siobhan. Say hello, Siobhan.
Hello, Connor.
That was so good.
I was going to leave room for a joke there, and then I didn't. I'm going to keep it professional for as long as I can.
For as long as you can. So me and Siobhan met over a year ago back in Bali, didn't we? When we did some training together in
2 years ago.
2 years ago? Wasn't it last January? Oh, it's about a year and a half ago then now, isn't it?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, it was about a year ago.
But anyway, we've known each
other. Sorry, you're right.
we've done a fair few adventures together, haven't we? We did turf games in London. We trained together in Bali.
We climbed that mountain.
We climbed that mountain in Wales. So we've done a fair few adventures, and we did do a podcast towards the end of last summer. I think we did it about August, September time. And I just wanted to get you on again because when we did that podcast, you were in a bit of a rush. You had to jump off and catch a flight. So I thought now, with all the time we've got on our hands, it'd be a bit of a perfect time to get back into it, get into a few more details that we didn't get to go over last time, cover some topics that you've got a good amount of insight into that we really didn't get to cover last time. So for anyone who doesn't know who you are, do you just want to give like the Siobhan 101, get into your backstory and kind of give everyone a bit of the pathway of success that has led you to where you are today?
I suppose it's a long story that I've told loads of times. So I won't bore anyone who does know me, but I became a personal trainer 5 years ago after being a bit lost in life. And then I built my business mainly using Instagram. I kind of got myself in shape by being motivated to change my life. So I wanted to be my own advertisement. So I got myself in shape and I shared it all on Instagram and became a personal trainer. And then over the last couple of years, I moved my whole business online. I did a lot of traveling and I've just been really happy, and I've kind of put it all down to working on my mindset and learning as much as I can along the way. And what I try and do is just help other people do what I do. And I don't mean go travel or anything, but just to find a bit of happiness day to day and not just be feeling stuck in a rut or anything like that. So that's a very short version.
I think you, like, out of a lot of people I know, and especially people on social media, because sometimes the external forces at work on social media can get to you, but out of all the people I know, you seem to tamper the balance of health versus mindset versus happiness versus looking after yourself. Out of all the people I know, you managed to like tinker that line of balance better than anyone else. And I want to get into that a little bit today. What you did a couple of bodybuilding shows, didn't you, on your way?
I did one.
And how was that experience? That's something that I always like to get into and to talk about, as you know, from our previous conversation. Like, what was that whole experience like for you?
So yeah, it was 2017, and I was just at a time, like for a long time I thought I would never do it, because I've seen so many people who looked absolutely miserable and starving and training too hard, and I always said it wasn't for me. But then I had a friend who had prepped, but had done it while traveling and while really enjoying her life, and I was like, hold on, if you could do it. So I said I'd try it, and I did, and I really enjoyed my prep, and I had a really good coach, and I really struggled after the show though. Like I did really well, and I really didn't think I didn't really see any harm in doing it. I said, if it causes my health and happiness to be sacrificed anyway, I'll stop. But I really enjoyed the process. So afterwards, I just struggled so much, and it's interesting because it's around this time 3 years ago. So I'm kind of seeing pictures coming up now in my time hop and stuff, and I'm like, God, all I remember about that photo is feeling so fat, and like I woun't post it. And yet if you look at it now, I'm like 20 kilos lighter than I am now, and I was like tiny, and I feel so sad that I didn't actually get to enjoy being in the best shape of my life. I'll say that's subjectively. But like that's the way a lot of women think. If they just get as lean as they possibly can and get shredded, that'll bring happiness. And it can, to a point. Like I think it is good to like improve yourself, but I don't think it's good to train to a point where your health is sacrificed. And I didn't even realize at the time that the reason I wasn't happy with my body, it was because I kept trying to keep my calories low, and then ended up binging, and then being angry at myself, and then not wanting to go out and live my life, even though I had promised that's what I would do after my show, and feeling really fat, even though I knew I was still skinny. And I use those words very, subjective. In my head, I was like, I'm so fat, even though. But at the same time, I also knew I wasn't, so I wasn't even able to say it online. Like, if I had even said that online, people would be like, hop on. And I'd be like, oh, right. But it
Yeah,
was just such a hard journey to share online afterwards.
I think one of the things that we always try and push is that, like, as a fitness professional, is that what the core reason that we go on these journeys and that we try to do the things that we do is that at some point or at some level, they bring us some form of happiness. And like, I'm going to say like 90% of people who I've spoken to who have done the bodybuilding shows, like they lose a lot of happiness afterwards. And that journey and that purpose that it gives you leading up to your shows can be quite good. Like there is a lot of limitations around that and a lot of detrimental health impacts along that journey. But after the show and post show, and this doesn't really get spoken about that lot, like it brings people a lot of unhappiness because it changes their perspective of themselves so much, because they're like, we've now got to this point, this peak that ultimately is not sustainable over a long period of time. So now anything after that point is not going to be your peak because it's not sustainable. And then
I know, like I had built my
business
on transformation pictures. Like everything I had, like my whole, and I got so much attention in the run up to the show because of this dramatic transformation that I had done. Every Thursday was Throwback Thursday or Transformation Tuesday. And so afterwards, I remember not even wanting, like I got the pictures back, say from the stage, whatever, about a couple of days afterwards. And I remember being like, I can't post that now because I don't look like that anymore. And this is, 3 or 4 days after, because I was bloated from drinking water again. That's not just a problem with competing. Like we see that across social media now, is that we really do praise people's appearance too much, where you don't know by praising someone's weight loss, you don't know why that is. It could be that because they're obviously very stressed or under eating or, something not good. And we're like, flames goals. And then you don't realize that you could be then implementing a level of, I don't know what to call it. Like I even get it now. Like I'm very comfortable now, but sometimes I'm like, oh, I can't post. Like, especially now when I've nothing to post, I'm like, oh, I'll post an old picture. And then like, oh God, I can't post that. I don't look like that now. Like even just me, but I don't really care because I know that people, it's a natural reaction. Like when you see someone in good shape, you're going to be like, wow, you look great. But
are you happy?
I don't know if I think the best way to praise someone is to actually just not mention their weight. And that's something I'm working on. I have to say it's not, I'm not saying it's very much easier said than done, because it's really easy when you're scrolling through Instagram, you see someone shredded and you're like, whoa, goals. But sometimes, like even now when I look at girls and I see them shredded, I'm kind of like, oh, what did that take to get there? Or I kind of know a little bit more about what it entails, and it's not just like, oh, or else they've just got really good genetics as well. Or,
I was talking to a friend who owns quite a big business, and we were just throwing some ideas around, and he was throwing some advice towards me because we're trying to start a business, and he was like, you need to be careful. He was like, in business, people value money so much. He was like, but the ultimate reason that you create a business is to bring you freedom and ultimately happiness. But there's such an emphasis now, especially on social media, with money and the fame and the entrepreneurial and how that lifestyle has been called, and with all the people on social media and whatever. Now, when you were talking about that, it started to make me think about the comparison to that into the fitness industry, where you got all these people now who are trying to look good and look shredded and get six packs and get abs and get the big booties and all that sort of stuff, where actually what we should be striving to is to be happy and using exercise as a tool to make us happy. And like that comparison is there, like how people use businesses to make themselves look good on social media. People are trying to use exercise now to get into these amazing shapes, but ultimately in terms of their headspace, they're probably not.
It's only for Instagram.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like it's and that's the thing. Like Instagram will always be aesthetic. It'll always be the highlight reel. And that's why I like showing so much of my life. Like I don't care if I look fatter next week, because you'll have seen how much fun I've had over the last 2 weeks. I've been traveling for how many years, so that like when I put up a picture of myself now, I actually enjoy like comparing it to like say when I did my show. I'm like, yeah, I'm 20 kilos heavier, but like I've had 20 kilos of the best fun for the last 2 years,
Yeah.
3 years. And I think when you're in control of that, like when you're aware of why you're putting on weight and you're not angry at yourself, it's very excuse me, it's very easy to just accept it. And same with, like, I look at people, I hate seeing like people being flashy with money on Instagram, and like I probably might be guilty of it sometimes, but I just don't understand, like, what I don't understand why people show it off. But then I suppose if you compare it to fitness, maybe it's like me when I stood on stage,
Yeah,
like, look how good I
exactly.
look.
And a lot of it is just it's born in insecurities and low self-worth, and
Yeah,
people need that external affirmation to make themselves feel better, where a lot of the time, like, long-term happiness comes from within, as you know. And that's the thing, talking to you now, like you said, you're 20 kilos heavier than you were before, than when you did your shows. Yeah, like, I'm gonna, like, throw a wild ball here, but I'm gonna say you were happier than when you were then. And
yeah. Well, I mean, like, I really enjoy. I always say, like, on prep, I really enjoyed that sense of achievement and like waking up every day
yeah,
and feeling a bit leaner. Like, I really enjoyed, like, even now after a few days of like when I actually do diet and train, I'm like, yeah, I feel accomplished. But at the time, it was just something I needed, that, like, I was bored
yeah,
otherwise. And it's why I don't keep it up now. Like, I diet now when I can. But no, yeah, happiness now. Like, it's been a lot of work on my mindset and knowing what makes me happy. Now that I know that spending time with friends and family is important to me, I'd be more likely to choose that than over the gym. And when I know I'm making those choices based on my values, it's easier to not get angry at myself if, I put on weight or
let's get into that a
whatever.
little bit. One thing that you talk about a lot is your values and beliefs. Like, I remember when in my early days, when you get into the fitness industry and it starts to kind of, the lines between fitness industry and the self-help industry and self-development start to cross a little bit, and then you start to hear people talking about values and beliefs. And I was always like, well, like, give me a pragmatic definition of a value and a belief. And that was always something that I thought around it, and you look into it and you're like, oh, okay. So, like, dive into that a
Yeah.
little bit for me, because that's something you talk
I
about
do
a
think
lot.
there
And
is I always wonder, I'm like, why do I feel like I need to post an inspirational quote when I want to put up a picture of me looking good? Like, I'm like, why is there such a connection between fitness and, believing in yourself? But I think like training for me, I've like the amount of times been deep in a wad in a dark place, and you have to kind of use all these motivational quotes that you've learned to get yourself through it. And even like in the like a squat, always think a squat is like an analogy for life, where it's, when you go down, you have to keep getting back up, and then
just
keep
rolling
putting on a
off
little
into
bit
the
more
chairs.
weight, putting on a little more weight on the bar, and pushing yourself past what you think you can do, and if you don't get it, try again, all that stuff. And I think that's when you start seeing these quotes on Instagram, you're like, oh, that's good, that applies. But really, because I always looked at, like, I had changed my body when I first started this journey, and I wanted to help other people do that, because I was getting a lot of people coming to me that were like me, say 6 years ago, when they're just working full time, and they've been dieting and training all their life but weren't really getting anywhere. And I was like, what's different for me? I was like, I used to do that all the time. I was like, what changed for me? And I was like, it's my motivation had changed, because I wanted to, like, I wanted to be my own advertisement, like, I wanted to change my life, and that changed the underlying value, I suppose, what was important to me. So that made it easier to make those decisions. Whereas before that, I didn't really know what my values were. I was just a sesh mot. Like, I just loved going out and drinking. So, I'd train when I could, and then the weekend would come and I'd be like, yeah, YOLO,
Throw it
typical
all
shit,
away.
on the piss on Thursday.
So for someone who's
Um,
like who is in like a bit of a lost place, and they need a bit more guidance, what's the next steps for them who want to try and adopt some values and beliefs and use them as their guiding light? Like, I know you do a lot of reading, and like,
yeah,
how have
well, I
you
think a
come to that
journal
place?
is really important, to because like a lot of people, their just heads are too noisy, and they just need to like calm down, they need to slow down, listen to their thoughts. And I mean, there's a couple of books that I would like, The Power of Now and New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. They're really good at kind of identifying what's going on in your head, because you don't know how much noise is going on. You start telling
Yeah,
yourself, stop talking to yourself, and then I'm like, wait, hold on, who's talking to who? Like, what? Um, so when you're able to write down your thoughts and then question yourself on all your thoughts, so you might be like, I want to get fit, and then you're like, well, hold on, why? And then you know, I don't know, it could be something like, I just want to feel good, or, you know, I want to attract someone of the opposite sex. And then you might find then that if you know that, then you might notice that maybe when you find a boyfriend that you aren't as motivated to train anymore, because you know, you have that goal ticked off. So your value, you know, your motivation has changed. So I always think writing down your goals and really asking yourself why you want it. Or even, you know, closing your eyes and really picturing the absolute dream, you know, like what is the dream? You know, some people are like, oh, winning the lotto. And I'm like, no, but what does that represent? Is it freedom? Is it, you know, happiness? Is it security? Is it having a home? Is it, you know, and then ask yourself why you want that. You know, like I used to picture living on a beach, or, you know, with the laptop in the hammock beside the beach. And I was like, well, that's just, to me, that's just freedom and happiness. So that was easy for me then to make all my decisions based on that. Like I wasn't trying to make loads of money. I was trying to live on a beach. And then when I got that, I was like, right, I need new
what do I do now?
goals.
Yeah, I think journaling is one of those things. I think I can be very pragmatic. So when it comes to things like journaling or mindfulness and values and beliefs, and then someone can't give me a clear-cut definition, like there's a part of my brain that starts going, no, I'm not going to accept that. Like I want to be able to understand things in black and white. But as I got older and I've got more mature, my understanding of these things has got a lot better, and I've become a lot more open and accepting to them. Like I understand what mindfulness is now, and I understand how to implement that. And I remember there was a time probably about 3 or 4 years ago now where like I've never been in a place where I've suffered with depression, but that was probably the closest I've come to it. And I wasn't quite there yet, I don't think. Obviously, like that's subjective, so I don't know. But anyway, at that time, someone introduced to me yoga, and everyone was doing yoga. And then in the part of the yoga was the meditation, and that meditation did absolute wonders for me. And like, and that was kind of the tipping point where I was like, my mind started opening myself up to it a little bit more and being a bit more accepting.
Yeah. Well, sometimes when you start opening your mind, it can be like a lot of people don't want to be alone with their own thoughts. You know, that's the problem. You know, you start listening to yourself then, and, you know, it depends what your voice in your head is telling you. So that's why I think writing it down, it kind of, you might be able to read it back and then be like, hold on, that's completely irrational. And then, you know, it's kind of just getting out your thoughts. Like I was the same. I completely was like science. And, you know, my friends send me motivational quotes and I'm like, this is ridiculous. But I don't think there's any magic in it. I don't think writing down your goals is gonna, you know, make them appear. You know, I'm always like the law of attraction with action. Like it just makes you subconsciously make decisions. Like even something small I was thinking about the other day was like having a goal in terms of, if you want to have a measurement goal, like say you want to be a certain size, that is actually more effective than just saying I want to lose weight. Because, and also like I at the start of the year, like those numbers change for me whenever when I'm after a bad spell of, you know, holidays and Christmas and everything. I'm like, I just want to get back to being tiny, and then I get along, and then I reevaluate, and I'm like, actually no. Once I'm kind of back eating healthy, I'm like, I feel good.
Do you know what I think? Like, I think that's part of the beauty of it. I think as humans, we're always looking for growth, and I think we're always looking to go somewhere, and we're always looking for purpose and whatever. And like, you know, we can roll off a million one cliches about how it's about falling in love with the process and the journey there, not actually getting there. But I think that is so true. And like, I know it for myself that like over the course of a 12-month basis, I will try and get to one goal. And then at that 6-month point, then kind of go in the direction of another goal. And then by the time 12 months has come around, I'm just going to start that journey again. It's not because I enjoy getting to those goals. It's like because I enjoy the purpose that journey gives me, and how I'm floating my way through my body and figuring all these new things out. So
my goals have like it's funny because I've actually lived the opposite of that the last year or so. I've just kind of trained as I enjoy it. So like I haven't had any kind of fitness goals or anything. So I've been kind of doing CrossFit and doing Muay Thai without any intention of competing or fighting. So I'm just like, as long as I'm having fun every day.
That's perfect opportunity, because that's exactly what I was going to ask. That segues nicely. Talk to me about your training and what you do, because you have like a unique training regime, don't you, in terms of what you're doing? It's probably very different to most people.
Yeah, well, it depends where I am. the place I spend most time is Bali, and there I love doing CrossFit, and I love doing Muay Thai and Bali MMA. And sometimes like it depends on the week. And sometimes I'm like, I'm gonna really apply myself to my CrossFit today. This week I'm gonna spend time outside the classes, practice my Olympic lifting. But then I'm like, oh, I'd much rather jump in on a class. Like I'd much rather train with people and have someone push me. Um, and then same with Muay Thai. I'm like, I just really enjoy it. I just enjoy it's such, and it's really good for my fitness levels. And I just really enjoy the family vibe in Bali MMA. So I don't really have any. And then I came home and I was really lost. I was like, oh, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Like the only thing I like is now group training because I just
Yeah.
enjoy the company. So I started doing and I was always hated home workouts. I was like, I hate body weight stuff. I'm too heavy for it. And I had no equipment. But then I started doing the home workouts. My friend Leanne was doing them live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 12. And like, I was like, that's perfect. It's just something. It's not, I don't have to do it every day. I won't hate it. I'll enjoy it. And yeah, I kind of just started doing that. I started running. And like, I always hated running. So I started saying like, I'm just going to run really, really slow and aim to do 15 kilometers a week. And I've just been doing that on top of training a couple of times a week.
So for you, what's like, because most people nowadays will go to the gym, they'll go to the gym before work, they'll go to the gym after work, it'll be a big box gym, they'll walk in, they'll do their training regime, maybe they'll do it with a friend, maybe they'll do it alone, and then they'll get up and they'll leave afterwards. They'll do a basic resistance training session, or they will go in there and they'll do their cardio, or they'll do some form of class. Why is it you've opted to go down the route that you've gone down? Like, I'm no different. I'm the same. I love training that group environment. And for me, it's where it leans into that competitiveness. And I suppose
Yeah.
my opinion on this before I let you jump in is that like when you're kids, sport and activity is not an issue. It's not this big challenge that we have to perceive it as it is as we start to get older. And when you really think about that, it's because you go and do it with your mates. There's that little bit of competitive element at it. When you play one sport, you're better than your one mate. And when you do another sport, he's better than you or she's better than you, and so on and so forth. And I think as you get older, you lose that kind of that way that we perceive exercise. And now it just becomes a means to an end and a way to fulfill our aesthetically body composition driven goals. And personally, that's why I love training the way I do, where I lean a little bit into CrossFit, I lean a lot into conditioning, because for me, it's all about that kind of competitive element
Yeah.
to it. And like how you would perceive going to like football practice when you were younger, I now perceive exercise and going to the gym is if I'm going to training practice, not
Yeah.
I'm going to go and do 4 sets of 10 on bench press and then get bored out of my
Yeah.
mind and then look at my phone intermittently between sets. And like,
Yeah.
and that's my perspective on it. Obviously you include Muay Thai in your training, which I don't do. So like, why is that a similar pathway of how it's led you to your training at the moment, or is it a different
Yeah,
reason?
like I did bodybuilding for years, and it was after my show that I was kind of stuck with it, or like I felt like I was going backwards because I was still training like a bodybuilder, which when you're kind of like you can get stronger, but I also felt like to measure progress, you're looking at measurements and aesthetics and everything, and I was thinking I'm going backwards. I'm training, but yet I'm putting on weight. So I was a bit lost at my training, and then I was in Thailand, and someone said I wanted to try CrossFit. And I don't know, like as soon as I saw deadlifts on it, and I was like, yeah, no bother, I'm strong at deadlifts. But when you deadlift and then throw like burpees in between, I was dead,
Yeah.
especially in the heat. And then I was like, oh, look, something I'm not good at. So maybe I'll try and get better. And really enjoyed feeling myself getting better at it and getting competitive. Um, and with Muay Thai, I don't know what I enjoy about Muay Thai. I just love hitting the pads and kicking. And like I only ever do pad work. I don't actually do any sparring. Um, I think it's just fun. I don't really know. It's not like I'm not
Yeah,
competitive.
fair enough. What do
Um,
you think of CrossFit then? Because I know CrossFit gets a big bad rap and it gets a really bad reputation, especially in like your bodybuilding circles. It gets spoken about quite negatively. Like coming from that arena of bodybuilding, transitioning into CrossFit. And I know there's a lot of people out there who hear the bad rap about CrossFit but don't do it because they think it's going to make them injured and so on and so forth. Like, what do you think of CrossFit as a type of
I mean, I
training
think it's a
method?
lot healthier than bodybuilding, just trying to like flesh out that sentence in my head. I'm like, is that okay? Is that fair to say? You know, like in terms, like you're getting your cardio, you're getting strength, you're like, I'm so much more mobile, fit, and
Yeah.
probably not as strong, but that's what CrossFit is. It's like across the board, you know, like someone like Matthew Fraser is never going to win a marathon, but he'll be able to run a marathon and then deadlift, whatever. So I think CrossFit for me, it's like gotten me like an all-round better athlete, even though I'm not planning on competing. Like the problem is with anything, you can take it too far if you don't have a good coach. Like some of the movements are so complex, and if you do them wrong, if you're not being supervised properly, and if you let your ego get in the way, you know, you can get injured. But at the same time, you're also probably building your body up to prevent injury, other types of injuries. You know, like you're overall getting stronger, and more mobile. So
Yeah,
I
I
feel
think
like invincible.
CrossFit is like, it's that platform that people can use. Like, it's like anything. Like, if you've got a bad coach, it's going to be bad for you. If you've got a good coach, it's going to be good for you. So do your research, find the best gym for you and the best hyper training for you. But I think it's one of those, CrossFit is, I always try and explain to people, it's a bit of a platform. Like, you go into the CrossFit engine and it spits you out the other side. And by the time it spits you out the other side, you're largely ready to take on a lot of things. You know, you could potentially then direct your training towards a marathon. You can go and climb a mountain, or you can get heavy into Olympic lifting, or you can even get into gymnastics, or you could stick with CrossFit and try and take it to that kind of next degree. And I think CrossFit's real good for that. Like, you know, if you
I
look
think
at,
the problem is when you start getting competitive, that's where no, it's not a problem, but like that's where it can result in injuries. Or,
yeah,
you know, I always say to people, like, what you see online is like people do the extremes. Like, talk about Instagram, you always see extremes. You're not seeing like Eileen who goes in on her lunch and does a 40-minute class and takes things at her pace, and, you know, leaves a slightly fitter 60-year-old woman. um you know, what you're seeing online is people who are competitive. You know, they can say like, "Oh, the form is terrible on those squats," or like air squats. I'm like, yeah, but it's because they're just trying to get reps in a
yeah,
minute. You know, so again, it's just when you put context behind it, you have to, like, you could say, "Oh, CrossFitters' form is terrible." I'm like, yeah, but you should see them when they're training, not when they're in competition.
yeah. Like, it's like rugby, isn't it? Like, I don't hear anybody watching the Rugby World Cup and going, "Oh my God, they shouldn't be doing that. They're going to get injuries from doing that." Like, it's the same thing,
Yeah,
isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah.
And, you know, like, and yes, they probably absolutely batter themselves during a rugby match during a World Cup. But when you look at them in training, they're more restorative and they're mindful about how they approach certain things. Anyway, so you mentioned during all that you spend most of your time in Bali.
Yes. Well, when there's no coronavirus.
Yes, and that's kind of what I wanted to touch on next. I know, like, we spoke about it after it all happened and during the time. I'm sure a lot of people saw it all across your stories, but then you made the last minute decision to kind of abort Bali and come back home to the coronavirus. How has it all been for you? Because, like, I say this word very loosely, but you are a influencer, or you have a large following on social media of whom
Oh, I
you
thought you meant I just
influence.
influenced you a lot.
I need to get a nibble in at some point. But you know, you have a big following, so decisions like that very publicly open, and you know, you can get some ridicule. And I just want to know how this whole experience has been for you, because it's been a big hot topic with everybody, and like, you're someone who
Yeah,
I'm
it's been a
keen
bit
to get into it
mad.
with.
I think I was in 3 continents in 1 month there in February. Like, I went from South Africa to Mexico to Bali in the space of 2 weeks, or 3 weeks maybe. And like, when I was in South Africa in January, I think we might have heard of it. Then when I was in Mexico, I kind of was like, and I was flying back through France, and I was like, should I be wearing a mask when I'm flying? And then I wore a mask, and then everyone was telling me it's a waste of time. And I was like, oh, I'm never going to get this right. And I remember, and again, I don't watch the news, so I really didn't have a grasp on what was going on. But I was literally flying home from Mexico and going to Bali the next day, and I was in the hairdressers, and they were like, "Do you hear someone died in France, the coronavirus?" And I was like, "What?" I'm like, "I'm going there tomorrow." Like, through it, and yeah, so I decided, I was like, it's everything be fine. Like, at this time, I really thought everything was fine. I went to Bali, everything was business as usual in Bali. started hearing trickles of it at home. Sorry, but this is probably like the start of March. Um, and everyone's like, would you consider coming home? I was like, no, I'll be fine. You know, like
Yeah.
I'm fit and healthy, and everyone I know here is kind of a young, fit genre. Um, and I think Ireland, like there started being a few cases in Ireland, and I don't know how. Like I remember the weekend before I decided to go home, we were all out on Saturday night, we were having so much fun. Um, like James and Darren were out with us. They were over, like they were just in Bali on holidays, and they were supposed to be leaving at the end of the week. And something changed on the Sunday morning. I think I was looking at the numbers of ICU beds in Bali, and I was like, this is actually, there's only 35 beds, and there was 4 million people on the island. And again, I was like, well, I probably won't need one myself, but
Yeah.
I was like, what will happen on this island if people start dying? And I knew, like, I love all the Balinese people, and I was like, but they're, you know, they haven't got the money to, I don't know, to not like, and I knew it was all tourism because the people started canceling their flights in and everything. And I was so set on staying. I had just fostered 2 puppies, and I was so set. Um, and then on Paddy's Day, which is 17th of March, uh, I had already decided to start isolating myself, but I was all over the place because all the Irish people I knew were hearing from home, like how serious this is everywhere in the world. And then kind of like my British friends were getting kind of different news from home. So it was kind of, I felt so alone over there. Like
Yeah.
I had decided to start isolating because I was like, if this coronavirus hits this island, we're screwed. Like nobody was, like there was no hand sanitizer or masks or anything going around. I was like, if it hits, it's going to hit hard. Um, and I was isolating myself, but no one else was, and I just felt so alone. And then our Taoiseach, our Prime Minister, did a speech on Paddy's Day talking about how serious it is and all the way everyone was coming together by staying apart. Like it was this, I was so like homesick after it. I was like, I need to be in Ireland because the other thing is, I was afraid that there'd be some sort of civil unrest in Bali. If there was, like, I was afraid there'd be no food coming in or something, and I'd be on my own in this villa. Um, and
Yeah, I can
yeah, so
imagine.
I
Like
spoke to my family, and they were like,
a unique environment over there. Like I could imagine, like in England, like and Ireland a little bit, we really got into the thick of it at certain points, and like a lot of people were dying, a lot of people were becoming ill, and like I'm not sure how it all panned out in Bali. I haven't looked, but I could imagine
there's only
if
4
that.
deaths.
Oh, really? So I can imagine if that
Yeah.
situation got terrible there, then it could have not been a nice place to be.
Yeah, like I just felt like I was reading reports, you know, like trying to get them all translated and everything because the government were issuing like appeals to get like saying, please, everyone stay at home. And yet some of the biggest businesses were staying open. And I was just like, I don't understand, like,
Yeah.
what's going on? And they're claiming that they're trying to look after their staff. And I'm like, but what about the staff who are going to get the coronavirus and bring it home to their family? And I didn't know what was going on. But just felt so, and then it came out, the Indonesian government admitted they had lied about numbers. And I was like, I don't know what to do or what to believe. And I just felt so patriotic about how our government were, um, how they were handling it. And at first I was like, I need to get off the island, but everywhere else had already closed their borders. And then Bali said they were going to, or Indonesia were closing their borders on the 25th. And I was like, what? There's probably not going to be any flights after that. So I booked a last minute flight. Not last minute, it was on the Wednesday morning. There was only 1 seat that week on the Friday night. And that whole week, everything was it was just so uneasy. But then since I got home, everything's just been
Yeah, that was my
so
next question. Like,
calm.
how's it been at home? Like, how have Ireland handled the situation? How have the Irish people handled the situation? Like, it's been a real mixed bag of like emotions and
Yeah.
proactivity versus people being reactive and the media going into madness. And like, it's been a really interesting situation. And so for someone
Yeah.
for like me who's
See,
got like,
I can only give it from my perspective. Like, I honestly
yeah,
haven't. I'd say I've watched the news 3 or 4 times in the last 2 months. Like, at first, I just found it like quite negative, and so like I'd check the numbers each day just online, but I wouldn't go and watch the news because I just felt like I always think with the news, it's like if I can't do anything to help, then
yeah,
there's no point in watching it. Like, it's just not going to help my mental health. So since I got home, like when I first got home, especially my perception of what was going on in Ireland when I was in Bali was that everyone was just staying at home and being really good. And myself and Sinead came home the same day, so we quarantined together. And like, it felt like everyone was like, technically, so that just meant that we weren't allowed to go into any shops or anything. So we literally just spent 2 weeks in the apartment going out for a few walks. And then I went to live with my friend Leanne in Nace, which is like, I didn't really know anyone around there. So I wasn't like, I wasn't even able to meet anyone. Like, we were just going to the park. I was just working a lot, and I kind of just getting on with things. And I felt like everyone was. So like, if I even heard that someone had like gone to visit someone else's house, I'd be like, what? Like, and then someone would be like, everyone's doing it. I'm like, no, they're not.
I found that it's been very, it's been like politics. It's either been like very left or very right. Like, you got some people who are like, nah, it's no big deal. It's all made up. It's a conspiracy theory. Like,
I
I
honestly
don't
haven't
care
met
about it.
anyone who thought like that in Ireland. I don't think. Sorry, but I'm not saying there are. I mean,
Yeah,
I think there are people who talk, but I just mean everyone that I knew was taking it seriously.
yeah,
So it made it, and that's why I found it so easy, because everyone was like, it wasn't like my friends are meeting up like what was happening in Bali. You know, like people had different opinions. At home, I felt like
everybody's on
everyone's
the
in it
same
together.
page, and that's good and
Yeah,
that's nice, and that's kind of the strength of the Irish, isn't it? Like, you know, you have that characteristic as a nation where you all kind of stick together. And like, and then on the
yeah,
opposite side of it, I found the other side of the coin, that everybody was like potentially massively overreacting. Like, you know, it started to install so much anxiety and mental health issues and problems and kind of worry into people's life. And I think,
yeah. And I did find, sorry.
go on, carry on.
Okay, so like, I kind of tried to talk about this a lot. Like, it was basically a time of really high emotion,
Yeah,
and like, people were calling you like people out and stuff. Like, it was really hard on social media. Like, if I was so afraid, like, taking a toe out of line, um because essentially the accusation then is like, you went more than 2 kilometers from your house, you're helping spread the virus.
yeah,
um Again, luckily I was in Nice, there was just no room. I didn't, I was in the middle of not in the middle of nowhere, but like, I wasn't in Dublin. So I was fine, but there's that heightened fear where you might hear that your family have done something, and you could be, like, say your cousins have met up, and you're like, I can't believe my family would do that.
yeah,
um and that's when it's causing, like, your emotions are really high. And it's only, I used to try and say to people, like, okay, if you're getting angry, just be aware that it's because you're making sacrifices and they're not. Like, you're
yeah.
feeling like they're not trying as hard as you. I was like, you don't know the circumstances. Maybe there's some reason that they had to do something. I don't know, but at the same time, you can't control their experience. So, like, just know that once you know you're doing your best, that's all you can do. And getting yourself into a highly emotive state is just not beneficial for anyone.
I 100% agree with that. Like, a conversation that I had with someone, they were going off on one about how B&Q, which is like a they sell
Yeah,
garden
yeah,
equipment and paint and blah 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 blah, and
we
about how
have that in Ireland.
they'd opened and they started selling paint and blah blah blah, and then this was getting criticised massively, and I offered the alternative perspective of, how about the man who is a recovering alcoholic and is going to B&Q to buy himself some paint so he doesn't have to worry about picking up a drink again. Like, everybody was facing their own different
Yeah,
unique battles. And like, I had so many clients who had gained so much momentum with their weight loss journeys in their health. And now, like, they've just been presented this obstacle that's just going to ruin all of their progress. And then this is universal across businesses and other walks of life, where all of a sudden everything just came to a halt. And I think that gave so many people such anxiety. And like you said, like, I think everybody was tackling their own problems and their own battles. And I think the problems began to start is when people then started voicing their opinion to other people. And when
yeah,
they started
that's
saying, you're
100%
doing
the
it wrong,
problem.
I'm doing it right. And then like, you
Like,
throw the
Twitter
news
is
into that.
vicious. I go onto
Oh,
Twitter and I'm like, oh, I'd hate, like, people just go on there to give out about other people. And it's such negative energy. I know this is like, it sounds really hoo-ha, but I honestly think the reason my life is so good is because I'm so positive about everything.
yeah,
And I can see the patterns. Like, the people who give out about everything are the people who, I don't know.
yeah,
I'd love to, I try and figure out the science behind that, but like, they genuinely attract negativity. Um, and I'm like, again, I've had a really positive experience during this whole thing, because I've just been focusing on my mental health, and I obviously hadn't had any major problems. So it's really hard to tackle that online, where I'm trying to help. I want to help people get into a good headspace, but they're probably like, oh, it's easy for you. You don't have kids at your feet, or you don't have, I don't know, like, anything to worry about really. Um,
Yeah,
but it's like I'm like the reason I don't have anything to worry about is because I've worked on my mindset this far. You know, like
yeah. I think the way like there's just like I sort of found, and I've tried to tamper that line of balance. Like the one thing that I found at the start, people were like, why aren't you worrying? Like, why aren't you as anxious as I am? Are you not taking this seriously? Do you not think it's going to affect you? Like, do you not care about, the people in your life who could potentially, and I'm like, it's not about that. It's about that, like, I feel I have enough resilience to deal with this situation. And
yeah,
ultimately for me, like, I was like, all right, this is what we have in front of us now. Like, how do we deal with this? And we had to think about pivoting our business online. We had to then deal with all our in-person clients and find out ways to deal with it for them. And the one thing that I said from the start is that, like, yes, coronavirus is going to be detrimental to a lot of people, and it has been detrimental to a lot of people. But what about what comes after? And what about like the secondary and the third and the fourth effects? Yes, I may now be at home and I'm not going to get and I'm not going to get infected with coronavirus because I'm self-isolating. But now this means that I'm going to lose my job. And if I lose my job, then what happens after that? Do I start suffering with depression? How my financial situation going to be? And my emphasis was always on what comes afterwards. And that's what I spoke about
yeah,
a lot with all my clients, and people were getting anxious. I was like, now is the time to adapt and get on with it. And I mean that in the politest possible way, because this is going to carry on now for some time. And I think
yeah,
a lot of people, I think this was like a big separator. I think a lot of people will have suffered and will continue to suffer after this time because of what, it's not necessarily their fault, but what has happened to them and how they have dealt with it. And some people have thrived off this, and some people will come out the other end of this in like a massively more positive state because they have dealt with the resilience and they've been resilient to change, and whatever has gone on with it, like all this extra time. What about all these projects and these things and these businesses that you wanted to start and the content that you wanted to get into, or your exercise routine that you've been putting off and the diet that you've been putting off? You now have a blank canvas and a perfect opportunity to do it. But on the flip side of that, you've got the people who have hectic lifestyles. They're always on planes, they're always in meetings, they're always traveling. And now actually, no, now is the time for them to go, hang on a minute, I'm going to chill out, I'm going to spend time with my family, I'm going to do whatever, I'm going to be kind to myself. But on the other side of it, which is the approach that I took, where I was like, okay, now I'm going to really get stuck in. I'm going to use this as an opportunity to grow, do whatever like I've been meaning to do for a while, like get back into my podcast. That's one thing that's on my list. And I was like, I'm definitely going to do that. And like for us and for collective fitness, it's been a bit of like a blessing in disguise. But I also understand for a lot of people, it hasn't. And like ultimately, it's an opportunity. And whatever happens to us during this time, we've got to kind of deal with it in our own unique way, because every situation is different. But the one thing you shouldn't be doing is pushing your negativity onto someone else. And I think that's really important.
yeah. And being adaptable is the key to getting out of this. Like I think there was a lot of anxiety at the start. But as soon as the government kind of said how they were going to support everyone, like straight away, it was like €350 a week, no questions asked, just take it. So that kind of took a lot of, and then also they were willing to pay the wages. If some business said they'd keep on an employee instead of firing them, I think they offered to pay 70% of the employee's wage. So that, I think that kind of kept the economy going. So then I've just seen some people being so entrepreneurial in terms of like coming up with
Yeah.
these kind of delivery services. Like some businesses have thrived. So like there has been still money in the economy. And I think and it'll be the same going forward. Like the amount of people sitting at home, like I've made so much through affiliate links because people are just sitting at home with, they're not spending their money on drink and petrol and cigarettes, or maybe they're cigarettes, yeah. But they're spending money online. So I think if you're adaptable and can kind of see a gap in supply and demand and find a niche, like there is always money to be made. You just have to be really open to finding it. And the people that will struggle are the people who, with their ego, is identified with a label. So if they are an accountant and the accounting firm is closed down, they're like, where I'm an accountant, I don't sell things online. Like, so that's where people will suffer when their ego has lost its identity. And that's just a matter of changing your mindset. You know, there's people who were restaurant owners and the restaurant might not be open again, and they'll just be like, there's people who are entrepreneurial at heart will be easy, or will find it easier to pivot. Like I didn't know what in my head. I was like, I always think I'll be fine because I've always made the decision not to get a big mortgage or anything like that. So I was like, I'll just go with the flow. Worst comes worst, I can get a job doing something.
Yeah.
So I think by having that attitude, you just like worst case scenario, I'm able to handle whatever it is. So
yeah,
I think by doing that, it's easier to not be anxious.
I think what comes to mind is like a cliche phrase that's always thrown around, is that it's not what happens to you, it's how you deal with it. Yeah, I think it's what's the saying is like, it's like happiness is 80% how you deal with it and 20%
life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you deal with it. I only put up that quote last week, can't remember who it was.
There you go. So like, and this is a perfect example of that, like 10%
always.
Yeah, and like like some people will choose to go, oh my god, this has happened to me, and some people will choose to go, okay, this is what I'm going to do in response, and then they would come out of it a lot happier. Right, moving on, we spoke a little at the start of that about how you are a influencer, and I say that with inverted commas, and you have a large following on social media, and you do a lot, you have a lot of positive messaging coming out of your channel and how you interact with people. I want to know, like, this is a big topic of conversation at the moment, that you've got all these quick fixes and these magic pills and whatnot that are being sold via social media, and big brands are starting to have relationship with influencers and people with big followings. Like, what, from someone who's inside that world, what's your perspective on it? Because I know you have a very faithful way of dealing with this, and you're very open and transparent.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's a mad world. It's never anything I thought I would do. I remember I actually found a meme that I had screenshot a few years ago saying, where do I get one of those Kim Kardashian and Paris Hilton type jobs where they just pay you to exist? And then I kind of looked at it a few years later and was like, oh, got it. So yeah, it's not something I really intended to. Like, I remember the first time someone sent me a pair of leggings and I was like, sponsored athlete, dream, I've made it. And I think as an Instagram person, when I started Instagram, like, the goal is to be a sponsored athlete. Like, that was like why people were doing fitness accounts.
Yeah.
So over the years I've been offered a lot of things, but at the same time, like, I am very skeptical myself. When I look at someone's page, I know when it's like advertising, or I know when they're only like, there's some people who literally only go on their story when it's ads, and then you just lose them. Like, people won't watch your story, and then you'll get down the end of the line. Like, I've always, luckily, my main source of income has always been my coaching, so I've never had to take any kind of influencer job, so I can be selective on what comes and goes. Like, for example, when my protein approached me, I'd been buying stuff from my protein every month, and I was like, perfect, this is going to save me some money. It's stuff I'm already talking about, dream. And that's like 3.5 years ago, and since then it's been such a good partnership, because they know that I know what my followers want to see. So, and I will not show something to my followers unless I actually think they'll like it. So, if they said to me, oh, can you share this, I don't know, pre-workout, and say this and this, I'm like, I haven't had a pre-workout in ages. Like, I probably, like, they just don't ask me to do that. Like, I get to order what I want, and then I earn commission on what people buy through my page, and I'm very open about that. I say that on my page.
Yeah.
Like, if you swipe up on this link, I earn a little bit of commission, so thank you if you do. It does mean a lot. And then sometimes people email me to ask me for my affiliate link a lot, because they get value from my other content. Like, I'm not just, like, my stuff is not just advertising. I spend a lot of time every day, like, writing an email, trying to help people understand their mind a little bit more, giving tips on fitness, just book recommendations. And I think people appreciate, there are some people who just are anti-influencers. To be honest, I can see why that is. Like,
Yeah, there's very much that like light side and dark side to that world, isn't there? Like you've got people
Yeah,
like,
there are a lot of people who are dishonest. Like once you have
yeah,
attention, you can sell anything. And the problem is there's people who have fast attention and no business. So for example, if you come off a TV show and you've got loads of attention, you need to monetize on that really
yeah,
fast. And which means, you're not gonna start coaching people over years plans. You're gonna sell them 28-day fitness plans and
yeah,
you're gonna sell them in bulk and they're gonna be €20 and you're gonna
make a
make
killing.
a fortune off
Yeah.
it, and it doesn't matter if they come back to you in a month because you can just sell it to more people.
It's that awkward situation, isn't it now? Because there's been a massive like call out culture
Yeah,
where there's these magic pills and these fads and these quick fixes that just do not work. And if they did work, then we wouldn't have like an obesity epidemic or anything like that. Like there's no backing to them whatsoever. But people like, your Love Island stars and your Z-listers who have really been forced into the limelight and have now had agents who are now forcing these jobs upon them. And then, most people would accept those offers without even batting an eyelid. They have now been put in
yeah,
this position where they can earn a good bit amount of money, and you don't necessarily know what they're going to do with that money. They could be using it to feed their family or to help other people or do good work with it, or they could, being selfish and so on and so forth. So it's a really awkward situation. And I think like there's just been massive call out culture that has started in social media, which does need to happen because people need to know that if a young impressionable teenager is now taking this supplement and they're starting themselves in this journey that is doomed for disappointment and failure, and then could have potential more ramifications than that, like low
yeah,
self-worth, insecurities, which puts them on certain pathways in life which you don't necessarily want young teenagers to be on, then there's got to be some form of duty of care around that. And it's that awkward fine balance, I think. And I think there's a lot of, at the moment, the call out culture is being done without thought being put into how that's gone about.
yeah. No, I think the correct route is to report it to the ASA or
Yeah,
the I mean, if it is false advertising, um, or if they are claiming that this tea is going to make them skinny, that they've kind of gotten around it with enough kind of wording, like along
yeah,
with a calorie control diet, and it's just people don't see that, and the people like the amount of times I've been sold, a ab solution when I had abs, and people would have bought it like that because people are messaging me every day going, "Oh my god, tell me how much cardio and abs do you do?" And I'm like, "None. It's actually years of heavy lifting and slow controlled calorie deficit." And they're like, they don't want that answer. They're willing to, they would pay anything for a short, quick fix. Um, so yeah, I think like I don't follow a lot of I don't
yeah,
follow, I don't know, celebrity, like I don't follow any Kardashians, or I just have no interest. And it's funny because so the influencer world, a lot of them are always kind of like intertwined. And it makes sense. Like, I'd be friends with say James and Darren and stuff, and that's just from Bali and having similar interests and being able to, because sometimes you need to be able to talk about what it's like to get like incessant messages or blah blah. So like I can see how people end up, but sometimes there is a bit of a click with influencers, or everyone kind of does the same thing. But like I just have been always doing my own thing.
it's
So I've
yeah,
never
it's
like I don't watch other people to see what they're doing. So I've always just gone with what I felt right, and it's kind of led me. Like I've always also said no to things that didn't fit, and I've said no to some kind of money. And sometimes I remember one thing I turned down. I was like, that would pay for me to go to. I was in Australia, and I was like, that'd pay for me to go home to Ireland and come back after it. Like that would. But I said no to it because I just said it doesn't really sit right with me. It wasn't even something dishonest. It was just a brand that I just was like, I probably wouldn't use it.
yeah,
Like it was jewelry, like, and I was like, oh, I don't really wear that much
doesn't
jewelry.
align
So
with you. Yeah, there is a fine balance to it, and I think there's the culture that has now been created on social media is getting better and it's moving in the right direction. And unfortunately, some people have had to get hurt along the way where they've been called out, and there's been like massive ramifications because of that. People can be horrible, and like the amount of like
oh,
you
the
see,
internet is horrible.
yeah, and you can see that some of the things that people say to someone after they've been called out, and like you wouldn't want to be that person. But on the flip side of that, that has now then prevented other people from taking up job opportunities because they think, I don't want this to happen to me, and now I'm going to
Yeah,
be more mindful of what I say on social media. And I just think like that there is a duty of care that is needed there, and I think whoever is in that
I
position,
know.
And
But
like,
the problem is, especially with people, I don't know, like it's people who don't have maybe ethics or morals are getting loads of attention.
yeah,
And, you know, it's the good quality people who aren't selling their, I don't know. Um, like it's, I don't know what the solution is. Like there's no rules. They don't hand you a handbook when you get like a blue tick. There's no rules on how to behave or how to act. And I don't know, like the internet will make their own rules and will call out people, but I don't know. Like I think it's important to remember that everyone is a human. Like everyone has their own shit going on. You don't know. Like someone might, I don't know, do something wrong. Like, but you don't realize that anything could have happened to them that day. Like, and I think
yeah.
I don't know. Like someone called me out the other day and like sent me a really mean message, and I was in the middle of watching a funeral, and I was like, if only you knew what, like, because you
What you were
obviously couldn't
doing
go
right
to the
then.
funeral.
Yeah.
Like I just, and I'm like, I wonder if I wrote back. I was like, I just obviously didn't reply, but I was like obviously really upset at the time. And I was like, I just can't understand. Like people, like, they wouldn't think that. They probably think I'm just sitting on my beach in Bali, you know, and they think, oh, you have a great life, so I can
That
send you
said,
mean
though,
messages.
I think that is a better, like, you know, you see so many people put posts on their page calling other people out. And like, imagine turning on your phone and seeing a post on someone else's page absolutely slandering you and hammering you, as opposed to getting a private message. Now, the content of that message may not have been the best, but it's probably a better way to go about it. Private messaging someone and saying, you know, what you're doing is wrong. I'm going to give you this opportunity to rectify that before I publicly humiliate you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm sure they do. I don't know.
Yeah, true. Fair enough. Anyway, moving on. One thing we wanted to talk about as we're coming towards the end of the podcast is your mindset. Something you've like, we've dabbled on it a little bit in this podcast. We spoke about it loads in person. It's something you've managed to taper down to a really good level. Like, I want to kind of get an insight into some of your practices and what you go about doing in your day-to-day life that has allowed you to get to the place that you are in, and some of the things that you implement with some of your clients.
Um, like I think the more knowledge I have, the more I realize how little I know and other people know. Um, like I've read a lot about, I think traveling as well has helped me as well, just
Yeah.
see things from completely different cultural perspectives. Um, like okay, so like I have a very strict morning routine, which I think like discipline equals freedom. So like I know if I stick to my morning routine, I can do whatever I want then the rest of the day. So like I get up, I always wake up early. Like that's more of a natural thing, but I've always done that. I've always gotten my most work done early in the morning. So I get up and I'll read 10 pages of maybe two or three books. I will journal just like my thoughts on like what went well yesterday, what I'm grateful for. Like gratitude is so important. Like as
Yeah.
airy fairy as it sounds, it makes you then find positivities in maybe an otherwise
I was
shit day or
listening to a podcast of the week. So I use Whoop, the little band on my wrist,
oh
and
yeah.
it's like a heart rate monitor thingy. There's loads of other extensive stuff. And the owner of Whoop was interviewing a neuroscientist, so he specializes in the brain. And they were talking about journaling, and they were talking about gratitude practices. And they were saying, like, it's not that airy fairy anymore. There's been plenty of research done
I
on it.
know.
It's
Like
been
I
looked
was
at more
reading today
recently.
about psychoneuroimmunology.
Oof, it's a deep one.
So like the links between like your psychology with your obviously your neurology and your immune system, like everything is connected. And
Yeah.
that's why I find it frustrating when people come to me, because I'm like, there's actually so much going on. You know, like you might be not able to sleep because you're stressed, and you're stressed because you're not sleeping, and the food you're eating is causing you to be bloated, and which is causing you to actually, like, your gut is connected to your mind, so you might be depressed or stressed because of all these factors that are so linked. You know, like that. It's like you don't even know what part of it to start going at. You know, you could say, oh, if you exercise, you might sleep better, but then you don't exercise if you're depressed, or you know, it's so hard to know. And the more I learn about the body, I'm like, is there anyone actually looking at the whole picture, you know, in terms of like mental health, physical health, actual brain health? Like I'm reading a book at the moment by Dr. Daniel Amen called The End of Mental Illness. He's written a few books, they're really good.
Yeah.
But it's like looking how, if you've like worked in a toxic environment, like say you've toxins breathing in, you're more likely to be depressed. And it's like, does anyone ever ask a depressed person if they've worked in a place where they were breathing in fumes?
Try and retrace those steps. Yeah, I was
And like that's only a tiny part of it, but it's like I do. The more I learn, I'm like, oh my god, there's no like I don't know. So I think it kind of helps to bring awareness to other people. Like I'm really good at conflict now. Like I can't like it's really hard for anyone to now someone can annoy me and I'll kind of like I'll get a message and I'm like, oh my god, and then I'm so good at I'm able to write back to people, maybe explain my perspective of why they might be angry,
Yeah.
and see, maybe make them try without being patronized. Sometimes it's hard not to be patronizing, but help them see maybe how they might have got the wrong idea.
Well, that is mindfulness to a T, isn't it? You're
Yeah,
interrupting autonomous behavior and you're taking a step back and you're thinking about, rather than just reacting in like a
yeah.
emotional manner, you're injecting a little bit of rationale into the situation, which in turn then creates more of a positive solution to the situation. I think we're getting quite close to the end now. We've been going at this for a good while. One thing I want to talk about, which we dived into quite a lot on our last podcast, is that your level of happiness, and you very much found your pathway to happiness. We spoke about at the start of the podcast that exercise should be used as a tool to create happiness, not necessarily be driven towards aesthetics. Sometimes the two come hand in hand and so on. What advice would you give to someone, or what practices have you put in place that has allowed you, just the little tips and tricks that you've done to get to the place that you are at now with this level of happiness that you've got now?
I think gratitude and acceptance is really important, to be like to accept where you are, like, and not want like, I mean, I could very easily be like, oh, I wish I was in my villa in Bali. Like, how unfair that I'm in Ireland, when I'm actually just so grateful that I'm here. I'm grateful that I have the flexibility to go with the flow, and um, acceptance of where you are. And it's same with your body. Like, if you're training because you hate your body, it's never gonna help. Like, you need to be training from a place of wanting to self-improve, but not hating it. I do think, like, spending some time, like, I go through phases of being really lazy and really indulgent, and sometimes I'm like, after years of dieting, I'm like, no, I need to allow myself these days, and I do it, and like that might even go on for a week or two, but I know, because I know how good I can feel, I'm like, nah, like, I'll do that for a few days, and I naturally will want to go back to eating more vegetables and training a bit harder. And I think so many people don't know what, like, they're almost too easy on themselves. So I was trying to find that balance of like self-improvement and self-love, um which is really hard to find. I've kind of been at it for years, and I don't know, I think just having confidence in what you're doing, being confident in what you look like, just be yourself,
Yeah.
and like see that other people accept you as you are. So many people hiding behind, I don't know, stories and filters and appearances that, they're almost afraid to show their real self. When like, I think one of the reasons I've done well on Instagram is just being my authentic self as much as I can. And it's a two-way thing. Like, people like me for being authentic, but also then I like me,
Yeah.
because I'm like, oh, people like me and I'm actually showing me. It's not just me being someone else.
Yeah, that's good. That's amazing. Like, I think as a whole, people need, like, it's not exciting, it's not fun, it's not amazing. People just need to have more balance. And I think, like, and that's hard to say to people because they don't want balance. They want the extremes of everything. And ultimately,
Yeah,
people just need to be kinder to themselves. Just be nicer
yeah.
to yourself and find a little bit more balance. Let's wrap this up. Siobhan, this has been fun. Where can people
Thanks for
find
having me
you?
again.
You're very welcome.
Shiv.O'Hagan, which SIOBHOHAGAN, on Instagram, and ohfitness.ie.
Perfect. Thank you for coming on, Siobhan. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you,
Great chat as
everybody,
always.
for listening, and have an amazing day.